supposed to cry. Kept telling my daughters, big boys don't cry. And they kept saying, that's a lie. And they're right, because big boys do cry. This is so humbling and so, I never realized how emotional it is to lose a loved one like this. I didn't realize how wonderful it is to have friends, family, and neighbors that love you and your family and that want to support you. This is going to be, we would like all who would want to share to come up and share a thought or feeling that you have for Julie with your experiences. I know that there might be a lot that want to do that. So if you do, you have to be short. And I'll try to do the same. I had a heck of a time trying to decide what I should say. Julie changed Lois and I's lives. I mean, we became different people. Truly, our lives turned into Julie care. For 3 years, that's all we did was Julie care. And I finally turned to Lois and said, we've got 3 other children that's probably wondering where their parents have gone. And we had to change how we approach things. And we bought a trailer and started going camping and hauling them all up in the canyon every other weekend. So that our girls could remember they had parents and that we could have fun together. Julie was, I don't know how to describe Julie. She was a firecracker that was always going off in difficult ways and in wonderful ways. I thought I'd just share how we dealt with that firecracker sometimes at home. She was an escape artist. She loved being outside, and she would do anything to get there. And our home had a kind of a flimsy screen front door, and she discovered that she could kick the aluminum panel at the bottom of the screen door, pop it out, and slip through there and be gone in a couple of blinks. She could be a block or 2 from home. She'd be on her big wheel scooting up the street, and she made it out to Skyview. She went down to, oh yeah, she made it down to Maverick. Yeah, we would be sitting at home. We thought Julie was down. She loved to watch Disney videos, and so during her containment at home, we would start a movie. At that time, our television was down in our family room, and they'd say, "Do you know where Julie is?" And we'd say, "Yeah, she's downstairs watching a movie." And they'd say, "No, she's in our house right now, and this is our address. You want to come and get her?" So we would go get her, throw the big wheel into the trunk, and her in the car, and go and find her. We thought maybe if we built a fence around our backyard, that would be a good solution. The week that we finished the fence, we took her out in the backyard, and she wouldn't stay in the backyard. She'd come right back in the house. That wasn't a solution for Julie. And that was kind of a snapshot of our life with Julie. We were always trying to figure out how to take care of Julie's needs. And they were many and varied. I don't know if Lois is going to tell you about her sewing experiences with Julie, but she figured out outfits that Julie couldn't pull out her tubes with, or I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stop. I do want to say that I know Heavenly Father blessed our family by sending Julie to us. She made us better people. We learned to love and care more for others by loving and caring for Julie. I know Heavenly Father has a plan for us. And His plan is to come here as families and then to return as families back to His presence. I know it's a perfect plan, made for imperfect people like Lois and I. I know Julie's going to end up with our Father in heaven, and I would always tell her, remember this face. As you're looking down, I was your friend, you know. We tried to care for you. Because I know Julie's in a good place. She's with grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles that are loving the stuffing out of her. And I'm sure she's loving the stuffing out of them. And I'm grateful for God's plan of families and happiness. And Julie's a big part of our plan of happiness. And I bear you that witness of God's love and His plan for all of His children. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Amen. After Lois and our 3 daughters take a minute, there's a row here. If you had one. Oh, but yeah, after our 2 talented and lovely granddaughters are going to sing a song. If you wanted to come up, first one is lucky. The rest, there's like 4 seats right there that you could come up and sit.
Also, we'd ask that if you're wanting to tell a story, please come up. It's going to be recorded, so we want to get that on the microphone.
I thought I'd just take a minute or two and kind of, because many of you here don't really know Julie's story of how she got here, and just kind of, is this mic working?
Yeah, get a little closer to it.
Okay. Anyway, when I was expecting Julie, everything was going along fine, no problems, everything was normal. And then one night after a very extremely busy day, I'd been on my feet all day long, I was exhausted. I went to bed, and about midnight I could tell something was not right. I got up and I was hemorrhaging, really badly hemorrhaging. And after a couple of minutes it stopped, and I thought, okay, I'll call the doctor in the morning, and I went back to bed. Well, it started again, and this happened 3 times, and the 3rd time, you know, Doug was asleep. The 3rd time I called out to him, and I says, Doug, get in here for a minute. And he comes in, takes one look at me, turns around, goes back into the bedroom. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, whatever. And so I called out to him again. I said, I think maybe we should call the doctor. And he answers me and says, I'm already on the phone with the doctor. So I ended up in the hospital that night. We called Doug's sister to come help us. She'd been with us all that day anyway, and she came and spent the night with the rest of our kids and did whatever she did with them in the morning. I don't have a clue. But, so they told me that they discovered what the problem was, and that the placenta had torn away from the uterus, and that was what was causing the bleeding. And they says, you're gonna be in the hospital till this baby's born. And I'm going, there is no way I can do that. I've got 3 other kids. I can't, that's impossible. Sorry, I'm going home. And they said, well, you can go home, but if this starts up again, you will bleed to death before you get to the hospital. So I ended up staying in the hospital for 9 weeks. And she was born still 2 months early. She weighed 2 pounds, 12 ounces when she was born. But the point I wanted to make is they discovered, Doug discovered, because he was the one doing the ultrasounds every week, and that she had stopped growing. And the 3rd week of no growth, they decided it was an emergency and they didn't expect her to survive. And so they life-flighted me down to the University Hospital in Salt Lake, and that's where she was born. And I just thought it was kind of ironic that that's kind of the same way her life ended, with me and her on a life flight helicopter. When she had a stroke on December 17th, and the Logan Regional doesn't have what they need to care for stroke patients, and so they life-flighted her down and they let me come on the helicopter also. So Julie's life began with a life flight helicopter down to Salt Lake and ended with a life flight helicopter ride down to Ogden. And I just thought that was kind of an ironic circumstance. And I could go on and tell a lot more stories. Just to expand a little bit on what Doug was saying about the fence in our backyard. We thought we were so smart and that she would love being out there, and she hated it. And she would, if she didn't come right back in the house, she was trying to find a way out. She was, trying to find a way to escape from there. But we had some good friends who lived in North Logan, and they had a gigantic backyard, and they had a gigantic German Shepherd dog whose name was Bear. And we could take Julie over there, and their yard was completely fenced in, but the back part of it was kind of like a jungle and not kept up. And so Julie and Bear could go out there and play all day long, and she never knew she was fenced in. So that worked out really well. And Bear eventually got old and died, and so that was the end of that. But for a while, that was a great thing. We could just take her over there, and she'd have a blast with Bear. So, and I could go on all day long telling stories, but I know my daughters want to have a chance too, so I'm gonna let them go ahead in whatever order they want to do.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm Julie's oldest sister. I'm also the crier in the family, so you're gonna have to put up with me crying a little bit. But I was talking to my Aunt Leslie just before coming up here. We had kind of chosen stories to tell, and I had mine all set until I talked to Leslie. And I have to tell you about Julie's haircuts. Julie, I was the one that cut Julie's hair. I went to beauty school when I was young, and we had to do it in a locked bathroom, because if it was, she hated haircuts. And if it wasn't in a locked room, it was chasing her around the house. And so we would lock ourselves in the bathroom, and we had different techniques for getting her to be still enough that I could use scissors near, faces and ears and necks and things. And in the beginning, it was ice cream, and it was me and my mom and my dad. And my dad would we took turns. My dad would either guard the door, or he'd have Julie in this he'd wrap her arms around her like this, and then bear hug her so that she couldn't get her arms free. Because if her arms were free, she was batting at me and trying to cut her hair. And my mom stood there with a bowl of ice cream, feeding her. And eventually the ice cream failed, and she didn't want ice cream anymore. And we would stand there, and if you had your ear to the bathroom door, you would hear, meow, meow, meow. Because if we got the right animal and balloon sounds, then she would laugh with us and be a little more still. And I could, I was like, we only drew blood a couple of times. It was mostly my hands. But then the kitties and the dogs and the balloon sounds didn't work, and we moved on to iPads. And Dad would have her in a bear hug, and Mom would be holding the iPad, and she'd be scrolling, and I'd be frantically cutting. And by the time we were done, all of us were covered head to toe in Julie's hair. The bathroom was covered top to bottom and end to end in Julie's hair. The shower and the tub were separate, both had hair in them. The toilet, the sink, I mean, it was in every corner. And then we would unlock the door, and she was never so happy to have a bath because she wasn't having her hair cut. But anyway, she was definitely a firecracker. 85 pounds of pure determination, and she did not want a haircut. Anyway, please come, and when all the sisters are done, we want so much to hear your stories of Julie. Thanks.
Well, there is only one Julie in this world, and she was completely on all and only herself. She had none of the social filters that the rest of us have, and she didn't care what anyone thought of her ever. And so she really had no need to be anything but herself. She was just pure Julie. She felt how she felt, she wanted what she wanted, and she did what she was gonna do. She was both a lover and a fighter. There were times when I would be sad and she would come over and put her forehead on my forehead and giggle and put her finger on my face and just giggle until I was smiling and giggling right along with her. And then there were times when she would like push me right over the edge. And if you know Julie, then you know that her style of love is not always hugs and sweet affection. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was the forehead against your forehead and giggling. Every once in a while a hug. There was lots of play. But sometimes her love would look like her shoving you out of her room, shutting the door on you. Taking you up to her room to fix her movie, and then just undoing the fix that you did immediately. Or maybe sometimes even just taking your drink and dumping it on your plate as she giggled. But one of Julie's greatest loves was her teddy bears, and they went with her everywhere she went. To this day, we don't really know why, but despite her deep affection for these teddy bears, she repeatedly threw them into the canal behind the neighborhood canal. She threw them out car windows. She threw one off into the Niagara Falls, off of the neighborhood mist. When she wanted to offer them a nice cool swim or a fly through the air, we will never know. But we fished them out of that canal over and over and over. Bears weren't the only thing that Julie loved that she threw. Julie also was a huge fan of music, and she always carried a tape player with her. It's this, one of her tape players is over here. And one of the really common sounds in our house was cuck-a-luck, cuck-a-luck, cuck-a-luck. And followed by Julie giggling as she tossed her tape recorder down the stairs. And then she would walk down the stairs just to pick it up and throw it down the next flight of stairs. And she just got the biggest kick out of it. It's hard to say exactly what kind of joy she was getting out of this, but joy was definitely had. Even though she didn't know how to push one to the very edge of their patience, it was actually pretty hard to get really mad at Julie. Frustrated, though, that was real. We got frustrated. I remember a couple of times when I was babysitting her and she had pushed me to the limit. In a moment of desperation, I opened up all the kitchen cupboards in the kitchen. I'm aware this is not a typical torture method, but for Julie, She had a pretty solid case of OCD. And she really liked all the cupboards closed all the time. And so for a few minutes the tables were turned. We circled the kitchen, me opening all the cupboards, and Julie running behind me as fast as she could, yelling at me in her signature, "I am not happy with you" tone, slamming all the cupboard doors shut. It kept her busy for a time, and I got a little bit of reprieve from her persistence, and maybe a little giggle out of it. As much as our parents worked to make life as normal as possible, there were things that never would be. And somehow, some of the greatest beauty came because it wasn't normal. Growing up with Julie was a gift, it was a challenge, and a lot of learning. But most important, I learned a lot of love from Julie. And I felt just so lucky and blessed to have been her sister.
I'm gonna try and make it through this without crying. Growing up with Julie was a really unique experience. We truly grew up alongside her as sisters. But I didn't realize how unique it really was until much later in life. Things that we thought were fairly normal were things like every time we would walk by the front door, we would always check to see if it was locked. Otherwise, we would have a Julie search going. We always had a freezer stockpiled with ice cream. I think some of my friends maybe came over to play with me because they knew how full the freezer was of ice cream all the time. Walking around the house with thousands of balloons all over the floor, and even storing them in the corner. We had a couch that was kitty corner in our living room, and we would throw all the balloons to store them behind the couch so that we could get them all out again and play the next day. Having stickers covering everything. Stickers were everywhere. And then of course there's the taking apart and putting back together tape recorders, screen doors, toilets, repairing stuffed animals, lifting carpet up to dry it out and putting it back down, repairing VCRs. I mean, you name it, we did it. Despite our best efforts, search parties were a regular event in our neighborhood, in our house. We would rally as a family. When we heard the call, "Julie's gone," we knew what to do and where to go. And we'd always have someone waiting for a phone call from someone in the neighborhood too, because she was likely at a neighbor's house. Julie taught me how to love someone exactly how they are, how to have empathy for others and to stand up for and root for people of different circumstances. She taught me how to be an advocate, how to have fierce loyalty, and a lot of patience. Julie and I had a lot of fun together as kids. We were the younger two, and so we were kind of the pair, and we got to share a room for a lot of my childhood. And so I have a lot of memories of singing her lullabies and wondering if she knew what I was doing or not, but just loving her and wanting to sing to her because she loved music so much. Sometimes it was the Safety Kids, sometimes it was Disney songs. She loved them all. And we also had a little shrine to cats and dogs in our room. My grandma Taylor cross-stitched us a set of kitties, framed them for us, and we would have those kitties hung on the wall with posters and magazine pictures cut out. And
I would like to take credit for the steady stream of cats that I kept coming in and out of our house for her to pin down by the ears and find so much joy and love on those cats. In the end, Julie filled our lives with a lot of love and a healthy dose of chaos. I'll always remember the bubbles, the balloons, and the stuffed animals. And I'll always carry that love for her in my heart.
Is here, hear the yell, back to school, ring the bell, brand new shoes, walking boots, climb the fence, books and pens. I can tell that we are gonna be friends. I can tell that we are gonna be friends. Walk with me, Susie Lee, through the park and by the tree. We will rest upon the ground and look at all the bugs we found. Safely walk to school without a sound. Safely walk to school without a sound. Here we are, no one else. Walk to school by ourselves. There's dirt on our uniforms from chasing all the ants and worms. We clean up and now it's time to learn. We clean up and now it's time to learn. Numbers, letters, learn to spell. Nouns and books and show and tell. Playtime, we will throw the ball. Back to class, through the hall. Teacher marks our hide against the wall. Teacher marks our hide against the wall. We don't notice any time pass. We don't notice anything. We sit side by side in every class. Teacher thinks that I sound funny, but she likes the way you sing. Tonight I'll dream while I'm in bed. Silly thoughts go through my head about the bugs, the alphabet. When I wake tomorrow, bet that you and I will walk together again. I can tell that we are gonna be friends.
Start. I'll go ahead and kick this off. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Andy, Julie's brother-in-law, married to Angie, the blonde sister. We live down in Salt Lake, and so we would come and visit Doug and Lois a lot. One of my favorite things is when Julie would come out of her room and descend the stairs. There's a few different scenarios that would play out here. The first one was usually food related. As you know, Julie didn't have the prototypical diet. So she would usually beeline it to Doug, grab his hand, force him to the freezer for a giant bowl of ice cream. 10 minutes later, she would come back for a refill for that ice cream. And then a few minutes after that, there would be like a third bowl. This was really difficult when we're trying to teach our kids to eat healthy. I would have to field questions about, why does Julie get to eat whatever she wants? Why can Julie have more ice cream? Why does Julie get Doritos for dinner? Why does she get chocolate syrup on her dinner? Just things like that. It was tricky. Another scenario that would play out, as many of you know, Julie loved glasses. She just didn't love how they looked on your face. And so I learned very quickly. I used to wear glasses prior to getting LASIK just a few years ago, but I learned very quickly, right, that my glasses were a magnet for Julie to come to me. And she would come over, she would squint in my eyes, maybe a little bop on the nose or two. And then before I knew it, like it was lightning quick, the glasses were gone. I would get them back and they would have, smudges of probably a mix of chocolate ice cream and Dorito dust on them. And after I got LASIK, it was, I could see more clear, but I think I was a little less interesting to Julie, so that was a bummer. And then the last thing I was gonna say, this was my favorite, is when Julie would come down and probably after my glasses were swiped, I would get chosen and selected to go up to Julie's room and to help her. And Melanie mentioned usually something with her VHS tapes. And I would go up and I would try my best to help. Sometimes I was quickly replaced with someone else that could do it better and push out, but that was always a fun experience for me, just to be chosen by Julie and kind of brought up to help her with something. And Julie's had a big impact on many people, on several of you that are here today, especially for me. Angie mentioned the impact she's had on her. Angie has the traits of like an oldest child, and I think it's because of that responsibility and that love that she was caring for Julie at a really young age, and really helped to shape who Angie is today, and I'm grateful for that, and helped to shape her entire family. Julie galvanized them. They are an amazing family, and I'm so grateful to be a part of their family. And there's a lot of lessons that I can take from Julie. She didn't care what other people thought of her, right? I think it's beautiful. Most people would judge you if you poured chocolate ice cream on Doritos, but for Julie, that was her. Julie was Julie, and that was beautiful. And she was determined, and she knew what she wanted, and she would get it, and she knew what she didn't want, and fight against it. I think that's beautiful, and she was fearless. So I love that about Julie. I'll miss her coming down the stairs, but definitely her legacy and impact will live on.
I am brother-in-law to Julie, and it dawned on me just last night that I met Julie when she was 14 years old. And she's going to be missed. Julie was my alarm clock. When I would sleep over, I was 18 years old, I'd sleep on the floor down in the basement, and I would just feel this presence, and about 7 o'clock in the morning, just hovering over me. And I'd open my eyes, and she'd be jiggling right 2 inches from my face. And I'd, "Good morning, Julie." And she had a little nook down in that area that was kind of my bedroom when I'd sleep over, and she just, I just remember a couple things. I'm going to break protocol a little bit and say that I remember just being immensely impressed with Doug and Lois. I remember sleeping down at Cubby, and Julie came down and she broke in a stereo, and Doug just looked at me and said, "That's my Julie." And it stuck with me. And their example will stay with me. my son and I decided to try Julie's signature dish. She had quite a palate, and we decided, what's behind the Doritos and chocolate milk? And just a couple nights ago, me and Jack decided we were going to try it, and because it's kind of like French, it's got the savory, it's got the sweet, and I thought it wasn't too bad. I was expecting it to be a lot worse. Jack didn't like it as much as I did, but I took a second bite and I thought, I could see what she was seeing in this. And I just want to say that one of the night that Julie passed was a very sacred to have. I want to just mention all of her staff and the people who helped her over the years, and the family sat around for 3 hours and we just told stories about Julie and the love that was expressed to Julie by people outside of her family. For somebody who could never speak, and she had an amazing capacity to gather people, and it was a pretty amazing experience. And I also wanted to say that Julie had an incredible ability to surf YouTube. She could have cracked into the Kremlin without any knowing how to read or anything. She could get dialed right to exactly what she wanted and needed, and it was amazing to watch. And we love Julie. She can be really missed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie. I worked with Julie at Cash Employment Training Center. She was my very first client and I loved her so dearly. I was always so excited when I walked in and got to see that I was working with her that day. I just want to share one story. She also loved trying to get into people's cars. And one day we were on a walk, and to start off the walk, you gotta walk through the parking lot. And that was always a bit of a challenge sometimes. But what she didn't know is I knew her pretty well, and she had us held when she was about to try to get into a car. And one day, she was about to get into a car, and I stopped and I said, Julie, I know you. I know what you're doing. Don't get in that car. And she stopped and she turned and she looked at me and she just started giggling in my face. And I was like, that's what I thought. And then she just started laughing, took my hand, and we continued walking. And we went on a long walk. We went on lots of walks together, and they were my favorite. And I just love her, and I'm gonna miss her a lot.
And 5-inch heels, I still have to deliver this thing. Hi, I'm Amy, and I also worked with Julie at CTC. And one of the things I did with Julie the most was help take her home a couple days a week. And I was with her on Tuesday and Thursday. So on Tuesdays, we went to Doug and Lois's, mom and dad's, and on Thursdays, we went to the apartment. Julie had this 50-50 chance of whether she's gonna run out of the vehicle or fight you every second. Every little bit of the way out of the vehicle. But there were a few instances when Julie would get right out of the vehicle. If we were at her apartment and Lois's car was there, to her seat. Julie has a seat. Every vehicle Julie rides in, there's a specific spot that is Julie's spot. Don't sit in it. But if we went to the house and it was just Lois's car, 50-50 chance. And she is gonna try and trample the flowers on the way to the door. I did my best to save as many flowers as I could, but it was Julie. It is Julie. But if Doug's car was there, out there, and if Lisa's car was there, I got to know whose car was each, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, your sister's here. out the car, out the van, and she'd go to Lisa's car. So if Lisa wasn't there to get out of the car, we'd be like, Julie, she's not in the car. And I remember when they got a new car, the white car. Every time I took Julie home, it was unlocked. And she was so curious. And I'd be like, Julie, we need to get out of the car. And she did eventually get out of the car, a little bit of assistance. And then I had to block the car so that she would go inside and put her backpack and stuff away. But that girl just loved going for rides. And it was just really fun because anytime family was outside, out the vehicle. Anytime her favorite staff was there to greet her, out the vehicle. She could have the worst day ever and the best day on the van. And she was a hoot. But that's just one story. Hi, I'm Vanessa. I've worked in Julie's area for over 3 years. We moved back from Washington a few years ago, and I was looking for a job. And I worked at Chrysalis years ago, and I remembered like the complete joy I felt working with adults with disabilities. And I happened to look on Indeed, and there was a job. And I got into Jenny's place, and Julie was my first client. I remember my first day, they're like, yeah, that's Julie, and she's not feeling very well today, and she's usually walking all over, and I was like, huh. And she just stayed at her mat, played her blocks all day long. And then the next 2 days, she wanted to go everywhere, and I was like, oh, they were not kidding. And I just very quickly grew to love her, and I just learned so much from her working with her. She really taught me to just slow down and like go on a walk and see the world. You don't always need to have your face looking at a screen. You don't always need to be trying to distract yourself. You can go outside and see the sky, see the river. I just really loved that about her. And she was just someone who was so present in everything she did. I loved watching her play blocks. She absolutely hated the yellow ones most of the time and would throw them very angrily across the room. And I always joked that she was like solving all the mysteries of the universe in those blocks and was like way smarter than any of us could comprehend. But yeah, she was just so special. I always knew I had a Julie day, as I called it, when I'd look at my shirt at the end of the day and had smudges of food because she would be getting really close to my shirts after lunch or whatever. One funny story I think I shared the night we were at the hospital was one day, she did that thing where she'd get really close to you and look in your eyes, and you just got all warm and fuzzy inside and never suspected anything, even though you know she's up to something. And she got really close to me and then snatched my glasses, and of course she was lightning fast. And I took my glasses and I was like, Julie, that was not very nice. And she just goes, and I was like, I know exactly what you're doing. But yeah, she was wonderful. And when I first started working, I was with her for 4 months. And I remember when I got switched to someone else, I was still getting to know all the clients. But I remember looking at the other staff, being like really jealous, like side-eyeing them, just like, I want to go back with Julie. But anyway, I just love seeing the impact she had on everybody. And our friends with disabilities are so special and important and truly have the purest souls. And I love working at Cash and allowing them to be a part of our community. And I'll really miss Julie. Thank you.
Hi, I'm caregiver. I was Julie's caregiver for about 7 years, and I've got amazing stories from her, but I loved her so much. She was always so kind and so loving. I remember my first week working with her, she was just fine playing with her blocks. I really had to go to the bathroom, so I kind of snuck around. And As soon as I sat down, I hear the front door open and shut. So I'm running, trying to get dressed, trying to get be presentable, and I ran out, and of course she was trying to get into the neighbor's house. Thank goodness we stopped. After that, I learned really quick that it's okay to take a break, but you gotta lock the doors. She was very adventurous, and as they were doing one year work on the roof, there was a big white van with a bunch of saws and other wonderful equipment, and for her it looked like it was going to be the best playground ever to hop in the back of that white van. Getting her away was very, very tricky and took a lot of persuasion and a lot of talk of ice cream. A couple years ago, I found out, well, I came back to work to be with her after finding out my dad had gone. He had passed, and I don't know how she knew, but she wasn't always one that was affectionate and loving, but she came down and sat next to me and put her head on my shoulder for a moment. And at the time, that's what I needed. I could go on and on with stories of her. She was amazing and funny and really could make anybody laugh. But I am very grateful that I was allowed to spend that time with her. Thank you.
My name's Megan, and a number of years ago, I worked with Julie for a few years when she attended Bear River Activity Skills Center. And there are just some moments and people that come into your life and enter your heart, and Julie was one of them. And she became probably one of my favorite human beings ever. And she is one whose memories will live right here, probably forever. And with Julie, the first time I met her, I knew we were going to have a great deal of adventure and misadventure. And did we ever? And usually it ranged from, if I had to drive the van to pick her up or drop her off, we played the dodge game. We didn't know whether it was going to be a shoe or a sock or something else, usually hitting the back of my head with a windshield. It was awesome. Taught me great attention skills when I was driving. But I think two of my favorites were, we took her to Willow Park Zoo, and we were feeding the ducks. And at that time, she had a favorite pom-pom, and she carried a favorite picture of one of her staff. And she kept those very close. And we were at the fence, we were just looking at the duck, and the next thing I know, there goes her pom-pom, and there goes her picture, and she was, threw them over, let them fly. Maybe she was trying to feed the ducks, I don't know. But Doug, you talk about fences. I don't think I've ever seen her so motivated to get over a fence. And I thought, we are in trouble. So luckily there was no staff, we sent them, and they were able to retrieve them and get them back. And then we took her for her love of ice cream to Charlie's one time. And we were walking up to the counter to order her treat. And there was a cute couple sitting at the table. And as she walked by, she picked up his glass of water. She didn't just dump it, she dumped it on his head. And, you know, when you're out and about like that, you really learn you can't have any pride. Any pride. And so, and you just kind of look at him and you're like, that wasn't me, that was her. But I bless his heart, he was so good-natured about it, and he understood the situation, and he was so kind, and we all had a good laugh, and I just really appreciated that. And of course, she did her signature laugh and giggled and just thought it was a great time. But what I really love about her is she taught me so much about love. And I was very honored once to be able to have that forehead-to-forehead experience with her, and that was something I'll never forget. In that moment, I felt my heart fill with so much love. I've never felt that before, and I was so grateful for that experience. She taught me so much about authenticity, about loyalty. She taught me about not just looking down, but looking up, looking around, seeing the world and seeing the things that were incredibly simple, that sometimes you lose when you enter adulthood and when you get distracted with life and everything like that. And I'm so grateful. She actually taught me too. We took her hiking once, and in a hike, the rest of the group made it, and Julie and I made it maybe 200 feet. And in that time, I think she picked up more rocks and leaves, and she would pick at it, and then she'd get really close and she'd look at it. Sometimes she'd keep it, sometimes that also went flying. But it was just every couple of steps, she had something to see, and she didn't hesitate to look at it, and I loved that. And I love hiking. I'm a big backpacker, and that was something I had learned to do when I go out hiking. I don't look down, but I keep looking, and I look around. Anyway, I love Julie, and she will always remain in my heart.
I am not incredible at public speaking and stuff, and especially over the years of working with Julie. I am 30 now, and I met Julie when I was 18, and it was like my first kind of real job outside of high school after A&W, and so my first day at Chrysalis was the beginning of Julie moving over to Chrysalis as well. So everything was new to everyone. But over the years, I worked with Julie for several years and was lucky enough to become her house manager. It's something I wanted so bad, and I was a little too young when I first wanted it. I had my heels I couldn't walk in and my nice pants, and I just wanted that role, and I was not chosen that time. Then again, I broke out the heels I didn't wear again, and the dressy outfit, and I got it that second time. I just wanted to do everything I could for Julie, really. And I don't have a ton of memories of my life during that time, because I just was so focused on her and her success and her everything that, I'd heard. Maybe don't take her to the mall, like maybe don't take her here, maybe like be careful. We were kind of a pair, because I was okay with breaking some rules and going to the mall with Julie. We'll see what happens. And so we were quite a pair out there, causing some chaos with the glasses off the strangers and all the lies I had to tell of, oh, she thought you were her mom. I would like lure her around with little, we'd go to Alfie's and we'd get our little candies, and I would just one at a time, I'm like, okay, let's go to the store. She was such a joy to me, and I have so many stories. I cannot narrow them down. I spent all night trying to think. So unfortunately, I do have 3. I'm so sorry. I have to. So the first one would be Julie at the mall. This is when I learned that Julie loved Halloween and loves getting scared by very scary things. So we were cruising around one day, and we went to walk in, and one of those big spiders, it was on this kind of, I don't know, thing, and it popped out, which scared both me and Julie. And I looked at her, and I just thought, oh dear, like I just traumatized her. And her eyes were so wide, and she was blinking so big. And I was like, oh, it's okay, it's just a spider. And then she laughed harder than I've ever seen her laugh. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, you like this? This is good, okay. So we proceeded to spend about 2.5 hours, maybe 3, just with that spider, just back and forth, grabbing the masks, and I'm like scaring her. And then the funny part about that was as I'm scaring her and we're giggling just in our own little world, I look over and I see one of the top people at Chrysalis just out with his family, and I was terrified and said, oh, like she likes this, so it's fun. Let's see if she'll laugh in just a second, it's great. And we just had the best time. So that's one of my favorite stories. My second favorite story would be how sarcastic she was. She was so sarcastic and she was so sassy, and I just thought she was an icon. I loved her. I thought it was awesome. We had the best time, but when I'd be cooking, we all know, if you cook and there's the fingers all around the shoulder, and she'd sneak in, she's trying to touch everything. So I would warn her, okay, I'm turning on the stove, this is not the joke time. You gotta be careful here. And so, you know, she would try to get around, and I started joking and saying like, don't you dare come close to this, don't do it. And I would see this little light up sketcher go. And I just couldn't believe that. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And so, and I saw she was really playing into me being like, I can't believe you did that, Julie. I cannot believe it. And a little further. And a little further, and she was nearly in the splits, and I just loved how they lit up with every defiant step. And so that became our kind of joke there. And then, yeah, she was just so funny. But my last story I would say is, you know, being 18 and 19, 20, you know, all the ages. And I was also blessed enough to go, blessed enough, I ended up needing to pick up a second job a couple years back, and I went back to Chrysalis, and I got to work with Julie, and I got to do a couple shifts with her, and it was just a joy too. But when I was younger, I was going through a difficult time, as you do with breakups and things like that, and I just was sitting next to her, and you know, I'd be working full-time, maybe more. My longest shift, I think, was probably 18 hours, I think, with Julie. And, you know, she almost never got sick of me, I think. But I remember sitting by her and just being tired and going through a breakup, having a hard time, and I started crying and said, Julie, I'm so sorry. I'm having a really bad day. And she looked at me, and she put her blocks down, and then she scooted over to me and just gave me a hug, and I cried on her shoulder. And that was just a moment for me where I, you know, being young and stuff, I'm like, I'm helping her, and I'm gonna teach her all the things. And I was so thrilled about that. And as I got older, I really realized she was teaching me more than I could ever say. I would not be who I am without her. I don't even know who I would be. I don't know where I would be without Julie. She is one of the most special people I've ever met in my entire life. And the only thing I can think of when I think of sweet Julie is the joy that she brought me, is just joy. She was a joy to know, a joy to be with, a joy. I don't know what she was to me. She was family, she was a friend, she was my best friend at times, you know, even though we never really spoke. We had a bond together, and she is joy. And I really can't really imagine a world without her. So I can't wait to catch up with her.
I'm Susie. We were a neighbor across the street from Amussens. We've been neighbors for forever, since 1979. Anyway, our kids got to grow up with her, and they just mentioned how much Julie was part of their life, just a normal part of their life, and they didn't think a whole lot of it. Julie was Julie, and she helped them to be comfortable around people with disabilities, and they helped watch, go for a tent at times too. And one of my sons had mentioned about that she had a movie about Lassie also. She loved to watch Old Yeller. And Jason liked Old Yeller better than Lassie. And so he sometimes could convince her to put that on instead, but not typically. And he said we'd listen to music together on the Amussen's nice stereo in their basement. And then there was Spike, their cat, and how patient Spike was with Julie. Julie would just pull ears, and anyway, Spike was very, very patient. And then he brought up the fact there was a time when the young women in the stake took turns coming over and helping to watch Julie. They would take her to church, and then it got to a point where it was just really hard for them. And so the young women would take turns in different wards and come over and watch her on Sundays so that Lois and Doug could attend church. And I'd forgotten all about that, and it was real special. And then he mentioned also about Doug taking her around with the seat on the back of his bike, and playing uppity up with the balloons, you know, trying to keep them up off the floor, and pulling out her feeding tube. That was a constant battle. And I have glasses also, so I would experience that snatch suddenly, and she would come over to our house. Just come on in, and she was just part of our neighborhood and part of our life and the special part. We haven't had as much contact with her because she's been living in Logan. But thank you for letting her be part of our life. And she was very strong. Lois would call when Doug was working, when she needed help with changing her diaper. It was definitely a 2-person job, if not 3, but very, very, very strong. Anyway, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandy, and I also work for Passion Employment and Training Center. Many years ago, when Julie first came to CTC, I did intake for the company, and I also kind of dabbled in behavioral sciences as well. And so when Julie came, we never had someone like Julie. So I thought to myself, man, we're gonna change the world. We're gonna teach Julie so many things. So yeah, very wrong. She taught us more than anything. But one of the things that Julie did when she first came to CETC is she would eat her lunch on the floor. And so my goal was to teach her to eat on the table. And so I thought, if we imitate what Julie needs to do, we're going to really be successful. So there was a couple of times, we would eat on the floor with her. And so this one time, I remember, I brought my lunch with me, and I put it on my plate, and I was on the mat with Julie eating my lunch, and she was trying to eat hers. Before I could even blink, it was so fast. Like, my meal was her meal, and hers was mine. It was like intermingled. I don't think I did that ever again. It was just not an experience. And I generally have a hard time eating leftovers, and it was leftovers, and so, yeah, that was done. Anyway, I told the staff good luck, and I gave them the plan and said go forth and implement it. But anyway, my other story I wanted to share was, and I've heard some of you share the forehead moment with Julie. And one time, and we had several, but this one time I remember, I had my forehead to hers, and I thought to myself, oh, this is a beautiful Julie moment. I'm in the middle of a Julie moment. I'm going to really savor it. And she was being so tender, and I had my eyes closed. Mistake, by the way. And before I knew it, whack, she just slapped me on the side of my head. And I was gone. I'm like, oh, man. Anyway, I still treasure that because someone said she lives very much in the present. I think she just wanted to trick me out or something. She's like, Sandy's got her eyes closed. This is the moment. I'll never get it back. Anyway, what I wanted to just part with is thank you, Amussen, for sharing Julie with us. It was a privilege to have served her and to have loved her, and we will miss her deeply. Thank you.
I want to say thank you. We figured 50 chairs was going to be more than we needed today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. We're all going to miss her a lot. Casey, do you have somewhere they can share? Because we're out of time. Yeah. Okay, there's tables with clipboards.
We've got a microphone over here and over here. Jack will be over there. I'll be over here if anybody wants to share anything.
So Casey and Jack will be at these 2 tables. If you didn't get to share and you want to, we want you to. We love hearing these stories, and it has helped our family so much to hear your stories of her and your love. So thank you. I will close with a prayer, and then, like I said, please share stories, and we will we'll take the family, we'll take her to graveside.
Mentioned that there's a luncheon for the family after.
And there is a luncheon for the family after. I'm guessing we'll get back here around 2 for that. So, our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're here today at Julie's funeral with sad hearts, but with great gratitude. We're thankful for the gift of having Julie in our lives. Through her, we learned patience, compassion, empathy, and a deeper kind of love. We believe this was part of her purpose, to help us to learn to live and be better. We're grateful to know that her life mattered deeply, and that she is now free from the pain and the limitations of her little body. Please bring comfort, strength, and peace to our family and all who are grieved today. Help us carry forward the lessons she taught us until we see her again. We ask these things in the name